Rachel, by the way, Miranda has been using your products now for, gosh, I would say since probably 2017, 18, something like that.
Yeah, I've been a massive fan of your products for a long time. And I actually remember, I think I found them in 2017. Yeah, I used to love painting macarons, and
That was a big thing.
your paint range was just beautiful. And like when it came out, and actually there was nothing like it. I was explaining to Half like the differences between lusters and
Oh yeah, I had a right
paint,
education.
all the different types, but it wasn't just the products that are absolutely fantastic. And I honestly, I have a drawer full of them today because I just love
Oh, I
them as
love
well.
that. Thank you.
But it's the care that went into the packaging, the experience, and it really made you stand out. It's quite a fun, you're quite a fun brand. At the time in the cake industry, there was nothing really like you. And I really think that you've left a mark there and raised the standards of how we think about not only the quality of the product, but actually the whole experience that goes around it with the packaging and the little bottles, which are just beautiful as well.
I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. I think when I got into this industry, all the products that were out there were because there was a need, not necessarily a want. And that was I tried to believe our point of difference. I didn't want people just to buy Sweet Sticks because they needed it. I wanted them to buy because they wanted it. They wanted the packaging. They wanted to be a part of the brand. So I hope I did deliver on that. And since then, a lot of brands have come out and really upped the ante. So yeah, it's good to see for the industry. So
Yeah, I think you have to sort of.
One of my favorite one was your eyeshadow box, but it was actually for paints.
yeah,
And it's just beautiful. I just love the concept. It's amazing how perhaps you were influenced by makeup, but how that translates
much.
into paint, and how then we have those palettes. And yeah, honestly, your packaging really nailed it, and it still nails it. I think it gives you that edge on the competition. It is a
Thank
desirable
you.
product, and it's something that bakers just want to keep in their drawers.
I mean, you have to think, Miranda, it's a bit of an inspiration for us as a packaging company because we set out to create beautiful packaging. And you have to think like, okay, you get inspiration for somewhere to do things like this. Now, Rachel has a career working at Apple, which obviously is fanatical when it comes to packaging and obsesses over it, but they have a much larger budget than we do. So, it's a question around like, how do you create something that's special? And I think that inspiration is infectious, right? It spreads around. But I'm really curious, you are a proper serial entrepreneur, and we haven't spoken to many bakers who have such a strong entrepreneurial game before they even got into baking before. And it just made me curious to think, like, I feel like we have to go really way back with you because your journey started so long ago. But I'm just curious on one thing, and that is with respect to when you were a kid. I just have two questions. One was, what did you want to be when you grew up as a small child? And the second thing was, were you surrounded by a bunch of entrepreneurs or, family business or something that gave you this path from a very early age?
I could go on for a long time with that answer. However,
That's fine.
in short,
That's fine.
in short, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a fashion designer. And that was my whole drive and motivation through high school, primary school. My grandmother and my mom had their own children's clothing little business my grandmother actually came from Poland, and all she knew was to sew. So she started sewing and selling beautiful children's clothing at local markets. They tried to get a factory and set themselves up properly, but their language was English was a second language. It didn't go very far, and family issues, it never eventuated into anything. So I guess maybe there was a bit of that entrepreneurial side from my mother and my grandmother. And so I tried to push into the fashion industry, but then I realized later on it wasn't actually a particular industry that I wanted to get into as such. It's my dream was always to have my own business. And so before Sweet Sticks, I had multiple different businesses and tried different side hustles while working full time. I left high school when I was 16. My mother passed away. It was really a challenging time for me. And because I left school early, I worked full time. I always had a side business. And when my mother did pass away, I gravitated to a family who I now call my family. They're, they might not be blood related, but they're my family. So, I wouldn't call adopted, but my angel family. And anything I wanted to do, they always supported it. 100% backed my ideas, give it a go. Why not? There was always just that positive reassurance. And I realized that now now how significant that was. There wasn't what if, but there wasn't those conversations when I was talking to these people. And that was a game changer, I think, in my life. It was definitely a pivotal moment. And so when I came into Sweet Sticks, it was, again, I just wanted to start a business, and it was cake pops originally. But then, this niggle in making an edible paint, it was like someone was watching over me. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Everyone thought I was crazy of, making this paint that didn't exist.
I'm just curious, did people think, beyond your angel family, did people think you were crazy to set up your first business at 16 making sleepwear? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, were people looking at you going, what are you doing? You should be studying, or you should be
it was
working
crazy
in a
because
restaurant?
I didn't have, proper qualifications. I put myself through fashion school for a year. And then from that, I just went, I'm going to start, sleepwear. And I rented a studio from a friend and bought industrial machines. But to me, it was kind of what I kind of knew because my family did clothing. So it wasn't too foreign. But then I didn't even know how I was going to sell it. And then I was like, oh, just do party plan. And I even did my own fashion parade and all this crazy stuff. Like it just wasn't around in my group of people.
But looking back, probably it was a great place to channel your grief and to actually pour it into something that was that your mom and your grandmother, and you probably felt quite close to them when you were, even though they were physically not around, but quite close to them spiritually. They actually
My
doing this
grandmother's still
process.
alive, believe it or
Oh,
not.
great.
My mother isn't, but my grandmother is ticking along nicely. But
That's
yeah,
amazing.
possibly it was a definitely in regards to my mum. Yeah, it was a nice distraction from reality.
And did you then feel like, you did that for 4 good years, the sleepwear, which is an amazing journey in itself, because that would have taught you so many things. You probably would have made loads of mistakes along the way. And then you translate that into your next venture and coming, this is headscarves now. And, you're really, would you call that business a version 2.0 of what you were doing? Like you just took what you learned and just elevated on it? Was it an easier transition?
Definitely. It was a really nice transition because with the sleepwear and there was underwear as well, they were amazing quality, but I didn't think I could do anything with it further. And then I don't even remember how I got into the headscarves, but it was just a crazy changeover. And I was still working full time and I was doing this as a part-time hustle, and I would sell I would be at every market in Melbourne. So every night market, every weekend. And it was amazing. It was so good. All this cash money and by the end of it, because it was a cash world back then. FPOS was the side bit. It was amazing. And then from there, I grew it into different colors. I was really passionate about buying all the different fabrics. And then I had to get, my grandmother came in and helped me sew. I even had to get another little, Polish grandma on the machines, and
Amazing.
we set it up in the second lounge room of the house. And that was the part-time side hustle, and it was great. It lasted, I think, nearly 8 years, and I only stopped because I fell pregnant. Otherwise, it was a nice little adventure.
I feel like actually our paths would have been very close to crossing way back then because I lived in Melbourne from 2004 to 2005 to 2008. And I had a couple of friends who were really into fashion and just never buying stuff that was like mass produced or anything like that. I was just buying everything that was like made locally and all this. And I wouldn't have been at these markets, but I'm sure they would have been there sourcing some of this stuff and probably could have come across yours back then. Who knows? It's quite easy back then to come across it. But
Totally.
this entrepreneurial journey though is just amazing because you never give up on it. Like, so you have your first child and you realize, okay, I can't do this business anymore. I've got to do something else. But you never for once seem to accept the fact that you're going to go and take a standard corporate role and make that the primary source of income for you. It never really crosses your mind. You just think, I'm going to come up with something else.
Well, I did. I was a visual merchandise manager. I used to work for a company that was in all the airports. So I always worked full time in, I wouldn't call it corporate, but it was probably semi-retail, but the corporate side of it. And I used to plan all the stores, what they'd look like, set them up, pack them down. I did that for another pets company here as well. But the idea of my life working full time for somebody just never was my like core calling, I think. And always was always thinking, what can I do next?
Always a side hustle, always something in the background, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very
Yeah.
difficult transition because I understand through that role you were traveling a lot as well. So, and you're going probably state to state and just by the geography of Australia, and then also doing the fabric markets on the side. There's so much going on. It's a very busy environment. Then you fall pregnant and you're like, how am I going to manage both of these businesses? I can't be on the road all the time, and then I can't be just at these markets at night. So at that point, was it a massive transition in your head as well? Because these were two big parts of your life. Your life must have been very full managing both of these.
It was a full crazy life. My life has always been crazy. So it never dawned on me from an outsider to see it. I was like, oh, that's a lot. I'm like, is that really? Because I don't know any better.
I guess so. Everyone feels their time really differently. And it depends on, for some people, they might come back from that visual merchandising job and go, I just want to sit and chill, or I might want to go to gym. Sounds to me that you got home and right, let's get into my next project. It's like a flow state that you go in and out, and it's very normal for you just to probably try and cram as many things into the day as possible.
I'm still like that, unfortunately. I still haven't learnt my lesson.
Well, we never change, do we? But you next transition then into the world of baking after having your first child. But you said that when you were younger, you just wanted to work in fashion, be a fashion designer. So I'm assuming here you didn't do anything baking related as a kid.
No, absolutely nothing. My grandmother loves making her, cakes and cupcakes and biscuits, the Polish style, but there was nothing baking and cooking, and all of that wasn't in my mind at all. I fell in love with baking because of the cuteness of a cake pop and the creativity behind it. And back then there wasn't anything that people weren't really doing it in Australia. It was a very American and semi-UK, but it was mainly in America that cake pops were huge. So I thought I could potentially be that person to bring it into Australia and be a cake pop person.
But why cake pops? I mean, it's such a transition. I get it's cute and it's artsy and it's creative, but was there something, were you actively searching for something else that could be that you could build
I was.
and scale and
I
grow?
couldn't I needed something. It was just, I couldn't tell you, it's this inner need for creating something. And when I stumbled across it, it was more just a gut feel. Everything's kind of run on gut feel in my world. And at first it was just, I'm curious. And I just started, playing around, and I bought a book and I thought, oh, I'll make this. At first, initially, I don't think I'm going to be a millionaire from making cake pops, but I just went along trying to learn it, and I ended up enjoying it. And then it was the nature of, I think, every cake business owner, not every, but a lot of them, they start making them and people like the look of them and they're like, oh, can I order some? And it just naturally grew into something, which now probably when I think about it, I didn't go in full guns blazing going, this is my next part of my life. Now when I say it out loud, it was probably more just a desire or an interest at that stage.
Did you have a hard time letting go of the world of fashion and transitioning to this? Was it interesting enough that it sort of felt like, oh, actually, I don't mind leaving fashion. That's all I knew. And now I'm going to go do something completely different.
I don't remember it, to be honest, but I really did miss the markets more, and I guess fashion, in a sense, it wasn't me doing the headscarves and like scarf accessories. By the 8th year, I wasn't very creative. It was a good source of income. There wasn't any more joy of picking fabrics or, watch faces or all that sort of stuff that, kind of fizzled. So I think when I fell pregnant, it was, I guess, more excitement of the next journey in my personal life, not so much my business life, my career path, but yeah.
I think it's just really interesting how you can find the right thing and it just transforms what you do, and you're not ignoring what you did in the past. Obviously, you're carrying a lot over some of these skills, but you have no problem letting go of it. And the timing of it seems to work well. After 8 years, you think things have fizzled out, and now something else comes along that just captures your attention immediately. And it just turned out to be a cake pop, which is just a cute, very cute little edible thing that has so much attention to it.
But Miranda doesn't stop there, right? It's
No.
just this constant. It's this, and this is quite a familiar thread in your whole journey. It's this constant reinvention. You look at the cake pop, you take it as first of all, making it from cake. Then you look at, well, how can I make that more efficient? So then you go into this no bake cake pop. So you're trying to maximize the hours in your day so that you can then probably produce more as an outcome. And then from there, you then also look at, well, if no one's doing this in Australia, I can then teach as well. So the ideas are constantly buzzing in your brain of ways to constantly refine, or, how can I take this out to market? How can I scale it? How can I grow it? It seems like it's in your DNA that it's you're not prepared to just settle. You want to keep pushing and exploring and growing.
Definitely. Yeah, it was funny because funny story, when I realized it was something and I booked myself in for a cake expo here in Melbourne, and I was like, I'm going to teach it. I'm going to teach how to make cake pops. And I put it online, and a little add to cart and a video, 8-lesson or 10-lesson video on how to make cake pops. I sold so many and I hadn't even made the video yet. And I was like, holy shit, I've got to make this video now.
That's brilliant. Everyone wants to be in that position, right?
Yes, it was really good. It was a very exciting journey leading into it. It even took me to Mexico. It's crazy.
Was that momentum for your cake pop design? Is that because people were seeing your designs on Instagram or
Yeah,
Facebook,
I think so.
or other
Yeah,
platforms?
I'm pretty sure it was Instagram back in those days. I had a very small following, but I guess a passionate following. You create your little communities, and there was a Facebook group that I'm still a part of to today that really helped my business, which was the Australian Cake Decorating Network. And I signed up to her yearly membership, not really knowing much. And I would, every time I had an order, I would just post it to show off, look what I made. And, they're pretty cake pop or whatever. And just grew.
And then you keep exploring. I now can sell it online. Now, how do I cut down that time for decorating my cake pops? So
Yeah.
it's this constant refinement, process improvement,
Yes.
which I love. That was I had a past career in process improvement as well, so I can see that like addiction to constantly looking at, oh, how can I keep improving?
Still is.
And then this is the weirdest transition, because then you became this like almost food scientist, where you then decide, well, if no one's doing it, I'm going to look at ways of creating cake paint. Really out of the box, really out of the box. It's not like it's your background, but your strength is solving problems. So talk to us about how then you went about thinking about this, and then actually go into what kind of products do I need to find to do this?
It was crazy, and I still to this day don't know what urged me to push so much for this product. It was like I it was like I had an inside voice, just keep going, keep going. People literally thought I was crazy because I'm saying, "Oh, I'm trying to create a cake paint, or so I can paint on cake pops." And they're like, "Really, really, you want to make that?" And I'm like, yeah, I do. And I was so passionate about it. But people just thought I was crazy. So, but because I was decorating cake pops, and to make a paint, you needed to have powder and alcohol and all sorts of stuff to make it. But it would still be very grainy and all this sort of stuff. And it would take forever. And I had my newborn, or not so much newborn then, but still a baby at home. And so during the day, because I was at home, I just started Googling different ingredients. And it was really hard actually, because a lot of the food companies and, suppliers didn't want to deal with a crazy idea from a stay-at-home mum who is talking about cakes on a stick. The concept did not, no one understood it in the supply world.
I love it.
And
In your head, it makes perfect
it
sense.
made perfect sense. And so it did take a really long time. And I got a lot of knockbacks from suppliers that they just wouldn't send me a sample. I had to buy in really large quantities to try and get anything to test. And I'm like, I'm still in testing phase, blah, blah, blah. And I would Google what the ingredient meant, and then somehow would find a list somewhere. You know how it goes. It's just research, I guess. One thing leads to another. And then finally, I found one supplier who gave me a chance and said, "Oh, great idea. I'll send you samples." And he was a godsend, and it still is my supplier to this day, because he was one person that just went, I'm going to give her a go. And from there, it just grew. And because originally I designed it for cake pops, and then I had a cake friend, because I made a few cake friends in the community, and I had one come over and I said, I need to show you my new products. And I showed her, and she's like, oh my God, this isn't just chocolate. This is for everything. And I went, I'll never forget that moment. We both were like, "Ooh," and all these goosebumps just like came all over me. And I'm like, I've done it. This is it. And then I changed all the packaging to edible art. It was edible art paint instead of like paint on chocolate. And then it just, I posted one photo in this group, this ACDN group, and people got really excited about the launch date. And, when I pressed go, I had 10 colors, I think, on my website. I did a do-it-yourself website. I did all the packaging and labeling myself. I, did as much research as I possibly could at the time. I even remember the labels I got them ordered from Minuteman, a local Minuteman, but it wasn't on label sheets. It was just on a sheet of paper. I had to hand cut each one. And, but the orders came, and they continued to come through. And because it made other people's work, their work so valid and so beautiful, people were so happy to share their success with my product because it complemented their work so well. And it was just a ripple effect.
Just going back, Miranda, because I think I don't want to skim over this, but that period of time where you were testing and going out to suppliers and knocking on doors, how long was that? Because I think sometimes we can get a few knockbacks and then you just go, oh gosh, it's just not worth it. I'm not going to spend a fortune, or I just can't get there. This
Mm.
whole period of time, are you talking about 6 months? Are you talking about a
It
year?
was it was probably 12 to 14 months in total, because it was a part-time crazy idea. So there was only limited time, that I could spend on it, but there was still always something niggling at me. So at night, I remember if we had friends come over, they would see me on my dining room table with my little notepad and all my testings, and then even some friends got involved and got the science talk, and even me, I'm talking in science world and I don't even know what I'm talking about, but from my research I felt like I knew what I was talking about. So it was, yeah, probably a 12 to 14-month process end to end.
And did it consume you as well? It sounded like something that was just going to
It
niggle
did.
at you until you got it solved.
Yes, and um it really did. And I just obsessed over it. I couldn't even tell you why. And like I said, I still don't know why. And my husband was like, give it up. And I'm like, no, no. Now he regrets even saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Up to that point. When you launched, how much longer did you end up continuing making the cake pops and the cake pop journey in general?
It almost stopped immediately, because from there, the orders just grew. So they were first retail orders, but then stockist orders just were coming through. And my whole house ended up in a very short time converted into a, a factory. It's crazy. And I was lucky because I already had my food grade license because I was making cake pops. But I was lucky again because it was only a class 3. Cake pops weren't any danger food. Like, it's not raw eggs or milk or fridge related meats or anything like that. So the kitchen certification working from home was a class 3 for me, and my product was a class 3. So I could make, this product in my house, and then, but it grew so quickly that, from this little, we made a little room in the house to manufacture and pack and everything. But very quickly, packing turned into my dining room table, and then very quickly packing extended into the lounge. And then very quickly we had to make the main room, our bedroom, into a manufacturing room. And we would make, paint in there. It was just so crazy. It was such a crazy story.
You touch on something though that is a very interesting point here, is scaling your business. And most people don't have to worry about scaling a business until later and figuring out how to really do that when something eventually takes off. But you're effectively taking off from day one.
Mm.
So from a perspective of understanding how to scale a business, I mean, you've got finances to consider, right? You're outlaying far more cash. Did you have to go finance? Did you remortgage your house? Were you struggling with that balance as well as dealing with this growth, dealing with hiring people? Was everything coming at you at once? Did you
It
feel like?
was. My husband and I agreed to take out $5,000 so we could start this business. And that's all we used initially when we realized it was a viable, I guess, business to keep going with. The business quickly paid that back and was able to still be self-funded to this day, which is amazing.
Incredible. Yeah.
But yeah, scaling up, I don't know, it almost came naturally too, because you would get help where you needed it. Like, it was almost a reactive situation. So, first things first, I mean, at that stage, I was the only one that could make the paint, and I was very scared of letting go of my formula, my recipe, because it was my baby now.
Brand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's everything, your IP and
it's
all.
everything. Yes, my IP, sorry. Yeah. And so I knew I had to continue making it myself, but then what next? And it was packing. Packing was taking so much time. So it was a very reactive decision on all this, like, on scaling up.
So did you have this scenario where you had orders flooding in, but you may not actually always have all the packaging ready to go, like the little bottles or the exterior packaging, the labels, and then also shipping and figuring out this as well at the same time. I'm sure
Yeah.
that there's this demand, but then there's also, I don't have enough, or I can't fulfill this one right now. I don't have enough little
Yeah.
bottles.
Yeah. Yeah. It was always a struggle, but it was so exciting. And so every time there was a bit of a roadblock, there were just such successful roadblocks though. So you were so happy to like go, oh my God, okay, so how are we going to solve this problem? Because uh, at the end of the day, it was because the orders were coming in. It wasn't because I was trying to push the product out there. So I think that was what really helped probably mentally too, because it wasn't like I invested all this money and it was crickets. There was no sales. It was the complete opposite. So we grew by what was needed right at that time. It was just an instant problem solve time and time again. Friends would come and mix paint. I wouldn't let them, create the formula, but I'll put all the ingredients together. I'll be like, mix this, and I even had to research how to fill, because at the start I was filling it with sanitized syringes, 15 mil each time, like, because it's like, well, how do you fill a bottle? And then I realized I can't do this. So you'd go onto eBay and try and find a bottle filling machine. And I found this cheap one on, eBay from China, and I electrocuted myself, ended up having to go to hospital because I touched the wrong thing. And it was full startup world. And it was just such a joy, and you just kept going.
Was your husband part of this now, and your grandmother? You got the whole family and friends involved in the business, or have you actually made a few hires as well?
I ended up making a few hires. So my first hire was in packing. At first, there was a lot of hands-on with family helping me and my husband helping me when he could. He was working for himself as well. He had his own business already. So he was out a lot. He was running a whole group of plumbers. So, he was always out on the road. But I would have, family come and help. And then I posted on Facebook, I need, a couple of days, because I didn't think it was everything didn't feel like it was forever either, I guess. And so I just posted up on Facebook to friends, anyone looking for a couple of days, I just need a hand in packing. And she ended up staying for so long. My first employee in packing. And
It's such a lovely. I love these stories because it does sound quite romantic and quite nice, and everything's really good. But obviously, there are huge challenges around this. Not to mention, you're still a parent at this point, going through this crazy growth. You're probably working 15 hours a day, keeping up with everything, trying to
well, I had
manage.
2 babies by this stage.
Oh
So
my god!
yeah, it was definitely crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and keeping them away from knocking bottles over.
Exactly.
And
Oh, we could only work when they weren't there. And so that would be at childcare, or someone would be looking after the babies, because you just can't have both worlds together. And then when it was the end of the day, everything from day to night was just so crazy on how my house would look at the end of the day. But I was really lucky. Not so long after that, I had a studio, a retail space that was up for rent. Actually, it wasn't up for rent. I just knocked on his door and said, could I rent your space? And he said yes. And so randomly again. And it was literally a 30-second walk from my house. And so it was a godsend.
And that's the first official location
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of Sweet Sticks at
Oh,
this
so
time.
it's, yeah.
Exactly. And but was there enough space there to just move the whole operation into that and just free your house up at that point? Or was it
Yeah, if
you
there
were still
was.
oh, that's
No,
amazing.
we made it work. We, set it up properly. So we had a manufacturing area, a packing line, a little office at the front. And I think at that spot, I mean, by the end of it, we were so overcrowded. We had to at the end, we ended up always having to rent the next door shop front, just to help with storage and packing. We used to have these big days. If a big order came, we'd have to just pack, and we didn't have any room in the initial studio. So we did outgrow it quite quickly, as we have here as well.
and during this time, are you still doing a lot of product development? Are you moving away from the 6 colors and starting to introduce more your metallic range,
Mm.
and
Yes.
the expanding? Because I guess it was probably The demand was coming from your customers. Please do this. Please do that.
Yes. So I launched with the primary colors and then I think the pastel colors. And then it was Cup Day November. I launched my metallic range and I'll never forget that day. That was just such an awesome day. I remember being at my friend's house and I'm like, I've launched my new colors and I had 8 metallic colors. And, back then I used to have my notifications on for sales and it would just go bing, bing, bing. And I'm like, oh my God. So it was it was really nice to see instant success. It was, it was wonderful.
As amazing and wonderful as it did sound, this growth, I mean, what was the personal toll on this? Did you feel like at some point, did you just burn out? Did you get overstressed by anything? Or have you learned to deal with all this from previous entrepreneurial adventures to manage that or hide it or deal with it later?
Possibly. If you ask my husband, it might be a different answer. But I think over time and years, I've always had a mentor, a personal mentor. Also with Sweet Sticks, I think I learned my lesson on previous businesses. I had a really big ego and I never wanted to ask anybody for help because to me, asking for help meant I was failing. And I don't know why I grew up with that mentality. It didn't come from anyone I know, but that was embedded in me somehow. And with Sweet Sticks, I promised myself that I wouldn't do that. And if I didn't know something, I would ask. If I knew somebody, I would ask them if there was a way, an easy way. And that that helped me a lot in terms of success, I think, as well, because a lot of those roadblocks or problem solving, I'd be on the phone or asking somebody. It wasn't just always me coming up with it. I've got an amazing group of friends, family, mentors. So when those times of stress did come into my life, I had the one personal, I guess I don't know if I'd call her a mentor or a life coach. Maybe she was a life coach. I would see her regularly for 6 years, and it was just non-negotiable. So I realized very quickly that if my personal world was good, I can manage anything in my business world. And so my mental health on a personal level was probably really important to manage because then once that was okay, business, any problem that came would be okay. Does that make sense?
It does, but maybe just to help from some of our listeners' perspective as to what the life coach's role was for you, because it's not like a psychiatrist. It's not like therapy in that sense of the word from a medical perspective. What was the reason for you to have that reliance on a life coach, so to speak?
Well, I didn't even realize I needed. I just really connected with her and I loved what I was personally getting out of her. And I had lots of personal demons from my life, having my mum pass away, then, finding out my dad was alive and then him passing away, and my grandmother, has been an alcoholic all of her life. And there's such a personal story behind me that I did need a mental health plan. And so when I first saw her, I didn't know I would see her for longer than what it was. I think I booked in 3 sessions. But she changed my life in terms of I don't know, I felt like I needed to let go of stuff. I had anger issues and, maybe when things didn't work, I'd get angry. I couldn't get angry at anybody else. I'd get angry at myself. Maybe, who knows, my family, my husband. It was just this internal anger. Everyone's got their own demons. Mine was an anger thing. And she helped me release all of that. And then everything just flourished when I was getting better. Like I was healing and then my outside world was healing. I don't know if I'm making sense on that side of things.
You're making perfect sense.
Also, my angel mum is a kinesiologist. So, I have been with her since I was 16. I lived with her from about 17. And I always had support and help on that side of things. I've seen psychologists, I've, gone through like a whole library of this stuff. But with Sweet Sticks, my success, I think, is purely because I was constantly working on myself. And it was an example of it too. But the doubts of a creative person, you speak to any creative and they have all these doubts. I'm not good enough. And, this cake isn't right. And I'll spend 3 days on it. I'm going to give up. I'm going to quit. And the mental game that creatives have in their head. And so many times I've said, you need to work on self. You don't need to work on your creative side because you're amazing. You need to work on your self-doubt. That's where I think I was able to flourish in my business as well.
I'm just wondering if, because self-doubt is considered to be a weakness in that regard, sometimes you're told to forget about your weaknesses and focus on your strengths, but it feels like you can't let your strengths blossom or flourish without taking care of some of these weaknesses first because they're holding you back. So it's a bit
100%.
counterintuitive to think to just focus on the strengths because there's something that's really limiting you and you don't know that until you take the time to work on it.
It's so true. And working on self is probably the last thing on everybody's mind because it's easier to look outwards rather than inwards.
Yeah, we've talked quite a few times with Bakers about burnout in general, and more importantly, trying to just detect it, like understanding what that looks like for that person when they've burnt out and how they could go about fixing it. And I think it's just as we're business owners ourselves, setting up something, a company and a brand and building it ourselves. You're just so intently focused on doing that you worry that if you take away the attention from doing that, it's not going to go as well. But it's the complete opposite.
The opposite. Yeah. It's the exercising and the meditating and the journaling and, the gratitude writing and all that sort of stuff that only takes probably an hour that makes all the difference in your business world.
And have those tools been essential for you? Like I think about things that are essential for me. Like I know that I need to move my body because otherwise I get this cloud over my brain and I can feel like this darkness come in. And so like for me, like an exercise is a real important thing. And also for my sleep and my optimism and and also put some boundaries around my business and taking some time out like meditation or yoga or walking in the woods, etc. Are these all tools that you've had to put in for you, as well as having, those incredible, probably like epiphanies, like chatting with your life coach, where you're like, oh my goodness, this brain, the message that's going around in my brain, like you're not good enough, or you'll never make a success, or you're stupid, you've messed up there, or, all these silly subconscious thoughts. I bet the work with the life coach probably really helped just to open up where they were coming from, but also giving you tips to help rewire those as well. So when those thoughts come in, how do I then counteract them?
Absolutely. There was the life coach, probably the main impacts in helping me with those little demons, I guess you'd want to call it, or I don't know, but was definitely my life coach, my kinesiologist, and did different workshops. Just it's a constant just work on yourself. You can never stop. Even to this day, I see a regular kinesiologist, and even when things aren't bad, I still see somebody to keep me regulated, because if I go down, everything goes down. If I'm not good, I start making silly decisions. I even know when I'm sleep deprived. I guess sleep is just as important as exercise. And, I just had my third baby. He'll be 2 in October. And the sleep deprivation, oh my gosh, changes your world. So you're not even thinking straight anymore. It's just, definitely crazy. But yes, to answer your question, all of those tools are just very, very important. And yes, they all play a significant part in my life.
Thank you for sharing that, Miranda, and being so open and honest as well. Really, I think that will touch a lot of people as well as they're listening to that. I just want to talk about as you were growing the business, how do you cope with copycats coming into the market? Because obviously you created this a new niche in the market and you've expanded an explosion of a brand, tremendous growth. And then at the same time, you're probably very aware that you start to get copycats. And that's natural in any space when you've created
Yeah,
something amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to get
yeah,
onto that. But
yeah.
it's how you, first of all, deal with that personally, but also from a business perspective. How do you um, let that affect you or fuel you?
Oh, it's probably both, if I'm completely honest with you. At Now it's really difficult if I see another product come out like right now in my business world. It would be really tough because things have changed so much and business is tough at the moment. So when I see a copycat like right now, it hurts because I know that they're starting to really impact my business. Probably when it first started, it didn't affect me as much. It probably fueled me more. I mean, ask my staff, we would all have a, about it, but I would never share it on social medias or name and shame. I wouldn't do
Mm,
that publicly. I don't
mm.
think that was the way to go. Internally, we did. We would
Yeah, sure.
talk about it on an inside level on how to manage it. What do we do? And the drive was to always stay innovative. I would look at it as a compliment. I must be doing something right if, people are out there trying to copy it. And by the time they would come up with something, I've already come up with the next product invention or, next color or something like that to stay innovative. But now it's definitely a challenge. I hate it. I do hate it with a passion. Again, I would never show that on a social platform. I still want to keep the brand respectful, but it does hurt because after I'm 7 years in business now, and we've gone through COVID and trends changing and um, cake decorating world evolving so much in 7 years from, where it was 7 years ago to where it is today. And so there is a lot of competition and I don't know if the industry is big enough. It's a niche within a niche. And yeah, it's definitely challenging um, at the minute. But the way I handle it, I just keep going.
Your transparency and openness in other aspects is really quite admirable to watch as another business owner looking at what you do. You recently shared on your social media that you're going through a rough patch in the business and having to let people go, and taking your large following through that journey and helping them understand that. I find that really admirable, and I don't think enough. I think most businesses, even me thinking about it myself, I'd be quite scared to do something like that at first because I feel like,
Mm.
why are you doing it? But then you see, once you go through the process, you see what that does, and it brings such a human touch to your brand and in your sense. And it's just such an invaluable sense of building loyalty and trust and community with your customer and your follower in that regard,
Mm.
that you just can't buy that, right? You can't go to an advertising agency and
No,
say, create me a campaign that gives that kind of emotion. Just
no.
doesn't work. And I think the honesty and the openness there is just extremely interesting, but very admirable to look at. And I think it's just a bit of a blueprint for a lot of other brands. So look, you can do things like this. It's not all roses and beautiful sunshine, and what you project. There are going to be a lot of rough patches, and people
Mm.
just do not see it. They don't understand it until it's presented right in front of them.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure whether I should share it or not, but because I was having to make my social media coordinator redundant, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't done my social media for over 2.5 years. I'm like, I've got to do it myself now. I can't pretend that everything's okay because
Mm,
it's not. And I'd have to post fake messages. And at the end of the day, I'm still, it's a small business. And you're right. You need to, I felt the need to connect. We were so open in telling our losses during COVID, and we all shared, and everyone was so open about, what was going on for them and, what they lost and all that sort of stuff. And then I thought, well, why is this any different? It's,
mm.
I have to be vulnerable. If you know me on a personal level, you would know that this is who I am on a plate. There was no uh, changing personalities. I'm so open and honest, with my friends, and probably too serious sometimes to talk about feelings and all that sort of stuff. So I needed my community to know that's what was going on, and I'm glad I did. It was I felt like it was the openings for other people to share their hardship as well. And it, like you said, we were able to put a human behind the business. Everything can be, all that personal touch is really hard to connect to online. How do you do that? And even when you write, it's not the same. I do voice messages all the time. Like you can't do that to 200,000 people.
But what was the response? Were you surprised? Were you taken back? Were you
I was,
encouraged?
yeah. The response was amazing from businesses, from stockers, from customers, from other, cake decorators. It was all, from what I heard, it was all really positive and supportive, and people were really sad that the business was going through that. From the outside, you wouldn't think it is. And I think
Yeah.
that's a nice little pinch of perspective for everybody to see, that you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. But no, it was very supportive. And um, yeah, I'm glad I shared it. People got to know me again a little bit as well. I got to
Uh,
meet you guys, I think, from that. That's,
Yeah,
you know,
I think honestly, it just builds loyalty. I think when people are quite vulnerable, it's a real strength, and it would have taken courage, and it's not an easy thing to do, and also a very personal time for you through the business when you're probably at a low point and having to let go of staff. And we are talking to you when you're not necessarily on this trajectory of growth now, and now you're looking at how do I rebuild, right? How
yeah,
do I rebuild from the losses that I've had to and let go in of people. It's a very personal thing. And I think that all that for me, that just meant I felt like your vulnerability would probably lead to this actually a rebirth of an even better and bigger brand. I think then people were like, oh, I am sure you've been flooded with orders, and people were just rallying behind you, wanting you to grow and do really well in the business.
it's been. I was really sad when I obviously I had to make these changes, but I do believe everything happens for a reason. And I've been forced to go back into the business. And it's been a blessing in disguise as well. I'm able to re-look at how we handle our processes, how we handle our packing, how many products do we have? Why do we have so many SKUs? Do we need so much raw materials? There's just so many questions now that need answering. And I probably would never have gotten to that point if I still had people, really, because you have somebody else looking after these areas, and you just, kind of, I'm still doing all my bits and pieces, but being really involved inside the business, I'm like, I can make this change and this change. And it does give you that bit of a rebirth, makes you see things in a different way. And it's been a lot of hard work. These hours at the moment are just ridiculous hours. But the main reason for doing this was to, I guess, rebuild, get the bank balance up again. We're all here for business, and that's really important. After COVID, I promised myself I'd never get to that point again. And that's why, I had to make all these sudden changes. And, it's been, I think 2 months, oh no, 6 weeks since I had to let everybody go. And as much as I miss having people on the floor, and it's a lot quiet here, there's only a few of us, but I know it was the right thing to do. And yeah, it's definitely a rebuild for Sweet Sticks, even looking at different products and different ways to sell and be community driven. Do we really need to have 300 SKUs? What are we good at? Like, there's just lots of questions now. And how can I simplify things? And yeah, it's a challenge. And now I welcome the challenge. Ask me 4 weeks ago, I probably was not in a good headspace, but now I welcome it, and I'm looking forward to what I can make out of it.
I have no doubt that you will look at this as an opportunity to really revamp and reprocess and make everything work for the better. And it's just purely by the fact that you are putting yourself back in that position of kind of going back several years to where it all sort of started, where you were in control of everything
Yeah.
and you held it really
Yes.
closely and then you slowly let it out and
Yeah.
delegated, which is a really hard thing for people to learn to do. And now
Definitely a skill.
it it
Delegation.
is, isn't it? It's such a struggle. But you make that when, gosh, remember you make that first hire or that first task that you can delegate off to somebody else that they can take repeatedly, and all of a sudden you realize you've just recovered time, and time is the most valuable resource we have
Yep.
today.
Yes.
But it's hard to explain because it's so intangible in a sense. But it's I just feel like you will make a massive success of this again because of your ability, your experience, and your way of processing how you jump back in and turn things around. And you've already uncovered all this stuff in a short period of time. Now you just have to go and implement it.
Yeah, I
But
hope so. I remember even my husband was saying, just, keep someone here and do this and just do that. And I'm like, we have to rein it right back. I need to go inner. I need to work out what we need. What do we need? That's where the first steps were. And now it being, 6 weeks, I really know what I need. And the first job that I've rehired is packing. And
yeah,
so I've got someone coming in on Monday. She came in for 2 days a couple of weeks ago, but she went on holidays and she starts on Monday. And it's like, what a relief. But now
yeah,
I know what I want and what I need. Whereas before I didn't exactly know it grew. We grew very quickly. It hasn't been a short time, but the growth has always been quite, up ever since we started. So at one point there were 16 of us, and that to me is, quite big in itself.
Amazing.
that is
Yeah.
amazing.
So you do lose control, I guess, in certain areas. So yeah, I'm really stripping it back and we'll see what happens.
Did you think at the time about selling or perhaps just taking a break or letting go of the business, or was that never an option for you?
Sadly, and I guess that's probably a lesson for me in hindsight. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but
Yeah.
I wish I had the opportunity. I probably would have sold when we were doing very well because it was a really good business and whoever got it would have, done guns blazing with it. Now, and then I did want to take a break because, I had my third baby, but that didn't work out to have the break. And
They don't give you a break.
no. And now I would love to, I guess the new goal from all of these, changes, it would be amazing to have it run a little bit more self-sufficient. And I guess that's where these processes and systems I'm trying to implement and really scale back. And yeah, and just that's what I want. I want it to be a much more easier business, I guess.
And I think at this point now, considering from where you started, you're going 6 years plus at this point. There's quite a few things that have changed in terms of technology, in terms of processes and tools that are now new and coming about that you may be able to even leverage to help implement some of that
Right.
automation for you, right?
Absolutely.
So it's almost like you're not restarting the business, but you've got now a whole new suite of resources available to you that you just didn't even have before that
Yeah,
prevented you from implementing all this back then. So
exactly.
you can't. I mean, you would never beat yourself up for that because you didn't even have it. So now that there's this chance where you have such interesting technologies and tools around you to help you do what you want to do,
Yeah.
I think the timing of going through this downturn and upturn then for you is probably quite fitting. And hopefully we get to talk to you in another year or two, and then
And see
and
what
just hear a
happens.
very interesting picture of where
Well,
things are
it's
at.
it's
Very cool. That's really cool. Listen, Miranda, it's just been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and your honesty and your journey has just been fascinating and mega inspiring. Absolutely. Even just for me to listen to it, it's just been brilliant. So thank you for that.
thank you
Um,
for having me.
of course, we always like to finish up with a little quick fire round of questions. It's
No.
the first thing that comes to mind. It's gonna hark back on your baking days now. So we're gonna have to go back to that for a little bit. But I'll go first. You can explain it, or you don't have to. It's totally up to you. When you were baking, we generally like to ask: did you have a preference for American buttercream, Swiss meringue buttercream, or something else?
Because I'm not a baker, it was always American.
Okay.
Yeah, quick and easy, right?
Quick and
Um,
easy.
Yeah.
One aspect of baking you won't compromise on. Maybe it's time for Miranda.
Maybe it's the paint.
Quality, like the finish, it has to be.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Did you, back in the day, did you have any baking books that you would kind of be your go-to at the time, or anything like that you'd like to share?
I still have them. It would be the painted cake. What's her name? Oh my gosh.
What's her name?
The
You need to
painted
grab it.
cake lady or the painted cake. I'm gonna have to message you
That's
that.
all right.
Yeah, what we'll do is,
actually.
like when I do the wrap up of the episode, I'll say, by the way, that book was
Oh,
called.
oh,
Totally fine. Don't worry. For all you listening, don't
it
worry.
was
We'll get the
it was
answer.
American. There was an American cake pop book.
Oh,
I
oh,
can't
cool.
remember the name, but it was some cake pop book.
Have you
That's
got
what I
your
had.
Mac open? Can you just search for this? Because I think otherwise people will be
Yeah.
wondering.
True. So the painted cake lady?
Something like that. Her work's amazing. I wish I had the book. I just put it
Is
away.
it the painted cake?
It must be her.
Natasha Collins?
Yes.
There we
yes.
go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Firing.
The painted cake, Natasha Collins.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Um,
Is she Australian?
No, I believe she's from the UK.
Ah. Oh, okay. Very cool. Have to check that one out, right?
yeah, definitely. And finally, who would you want to make your next birthday cake?
For or
For you.
For
who
you.
Yeah,
Oh,
who would you choose out there to make your birthday cake?
Ooh. I'm a fan of so many bakers out there, though, so it would be really hard to name just one. But if I had to, I would say the Funky Baker. Batter.
Okay. Funky
Funky
Batter.
Batter.
Oh, that's so cool. Brilliant. Well, Miranda, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And we'll let you get back to your late evening over there.
Yes.
And we've just really enjoyed the chat.
I only wish we lived closer because I'd come and help. With, I don't know what spare time I have, but I'd at least do something. I'd just be playing with
you're so
products.
sweet.
She'll just be out there mixing and all this for you. Brilliant. All right. Take care, Miranda. All the best.
Thanks, guys.